Oh, tell me about it. Look, look what day it is. It's July 10th already.
Yeah,
What?
yeah. I got lots of court dates today. For me, I hate going to court multiple times in the day, but I guess it is a thing. People do it. All
Indeed.
right. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Talking Niagara with Dave and I. And this is Niagara Falls news in the talk show kind of format where he and I give our opinions about stuff. Mainly him, and he's usually wrong because he never lets me in edgeways. So I have to take my bit in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And he's usually wrong anyway, So and he doesn't know anything about anything.
Well, that's that. Well, I should be a politician then. I don't know anything about anything, and I have vast amounts of opinions on things I don't know anything about. Oh boy, I should be in politics. I'd I'd be the president of the world by now with my skills.
Yeah, the only trouble is you don't have the acumen of a certain Donald Trump, to bullshit battle and whatever,
Well,
That's
you
a
don't even have to go. You don't even have to go to the supreme leader, the U.S. supreme leader. You can go to our previous prime minister, Pierre Trudeau. We can go to Polyev. They all baffle gabbed a lot too. So,
well. There you go, and we love him really. We all love him really, and especially since Mike is saying good morning already. There you go. There
I
we go.
like.
Beautiful.
I love me too.
So, yep. So
Every
we
time I rewind, if when I rewatch my show, I say, "Oh, who is that guy? Oh, it's me." What an intelligent man. He doesn't
You're
say a whole
falling in
lot.
love. You're falling in love with yourself, are you?
Yeah, narcissism. That's what it's called.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. But actually, I don't think you. I don't. I've met some narcissists, and hey, Dave, you don't qualify.
Oh, I've met a sociopath a few times in my life, and how they are so sneaky.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my God!
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
takes a while to catch on.
yeah. Oh yeah, it does. And same with narcissists. You don't know they're twisting you around their little finger,
Yeah,
and it takes
and
you a while to catch on, and then they slip. But
well,
that's how I found out.
now they think they're the most beautiful and wonderful people without any evidence. Well, I
Yeah.
know I'm beautiful and wonderful, and I've got all this evidence. Anytime I look in the mirror.
Yeah. Okay. So what is good morning yep, us. What the heck is Legionnaire's disease going on now?
Oh, it's Legionnaire's disease. It's hit what I can't remember the city. Was it Chicago or something? I can't remember the city that. Or no, it's in. It's in a Canadian city. I was just reading about it too, and I've lost it.
It doesn't
Um,
matter. It's okay. Well,
no,
Legionnaires.
Legionnaire's disease is kind of a respiratory disease, and it was originally the reason why it's called Legionnaire's disease because it first came up when a bunch of soldiers were having a convention, and the disease got into the air system, the AC
Yeah.
system. I believe it was the AC system, and a
Yeah.
whole
I
lot.
believe in a Legionnaire's hall somewhere, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, something like that, and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of the
But
old vets
essentially,
got sick.
essentially, one of the main causes of Legionnaire's disease has been, they have found over the years, has tended to have been hospitals, old hospitals where they've done, where you're living on centuries old airflow systems.
Yes, but
You
once it gets
get
into the system,
ductwork, yeah.
it somehow is able to spread. It was more of an issue years ago. I haven't heard of pop
Yeah, I
up
haven't
of
heard of an
Legionnaires'
outbreak for
disease
years. Yeah,
for a long time, and these
yeah,
are usually isolated incidences. They don't sort of come out uh, spread so much.
yeah. They come from one building. They stay in one building, and normally what they do is get the people affected out of that building and isolate the building, and then a few days later send in a crew to actually clean it out. Um, but when it's things like hospitals, it becomes very difficult because you can't shut a hospital down.
Yes, so it can be very deadly, though. It is
Yeah,
it's very deadly and usually isolated to that one area. But the city itself has had an outbreak of, oh geez, what city? Um, I'll look it up real quick while we're talking about it, and I'll just have a quick look here. Uh,
yeah. But it's okay. It does happen from time to time. We have to be on the lookout for this.
outbreak.
And pay attention to it when it does occur.
Oh,
Um,
it's in southeast London. One dead over 46 in Legionnaire's outbreak. So, yeah, see, it is deadly.
yeah,
Um, and it says here what caused the 1976 outbreak. In 1977, the Legionnaire's bacterium was finally identified and isolated and was found to be breeding in the cooling tower of the hotel's air conditioning system, which then spread it through the building. The finding prompted new regulations worldwide for climate control systems. But we've
yeah,
had this outbreak in London, and one dead so far. 40 Legionnaires. Health officials have yet to determine the source of the second outbreak of the respiratory illness. And
is that London, England, or London, Ontario?
London, Ontario.
Yeah,
London,
okay,
Ontario.
right. Yeah,
And most of the people in the severe respiratory work within a 6 kilometer radius of one another. So it's localized. You see,
yeah, yeah,
they're very close together. So which tells us that they're going to have to identify where that outbreak is. They're going to have to interview all the people that are being sick and
yeah,
determine what commonality they have had with one another. What buildings have they been in?
yeah, yeah,
Because those are the breeding grounds for Legionnaire's disease. Is
yeah,
in air conditioning and air systems. Outside of that, I'm not so sure that Legionnaire's disease can be transferred easily from one person to another in a group.
yeah,
Not the idea is that it spreads quickly through air
yeah.
conditioning system and affects a lot of people.
Yeah, that actually is where the issue is. It spreads it quickly through an air conditioning system.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump to our first one. So, Strange speaks, but advocates denied a deputation at the city council meeting yesterday.
It seems to me that Strange has taken some consultation here. He's talked to a few people that have given him advice, and he has stood up and he has realized that he is the reason why women who say no, that
Yeah,
advocacy group, has come to City Hall. The
yeah,
advocacy group has, even before Strange has come up, advocated for anyone who's had an assault charge, then they should be restricted from being a counselor until the legal parts of the legality of their case has been resolved. And this is the debate.
well,
This is the
problem.
debate. Now, the Bill 9, which they're talking about, which they want to adjust to add into it that anyone who has had an assault charge put upon them stay away from counsel, recuse themselves of counsel duty until it is legally resolved.
Yeah, and I
That is
understand
not
their
currently
viewpoint.
part of Bill 9,
Yeah,
which is the Municipality Accountability Act.
Yeah, I understand their viewpoint, but it's not currently part. It's not currently law, and it's not currently even part of the bill. You know, fine. They have a right to their viewpoint, absolutely. You know, I'm not denying that. In fact, I would like to speak to. I would love to hear further from this from somebody who supports that.
Well, this is going to be put on the docket. Basically, they're they're going to be uh, addressing this. There's going to be addressing this in a meeting coming forward. Now, the delegation wants to speak to Bill 9,
Yeah,
not about Mike Strange.
yeah. He just
Although,
happens to
obviously,
be.
the reason why they're in the city of council is because of Mike Strange.
Yeah, of
Now,
course.
they have already advocated for this at other times.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. The Bill
particularly,
Nye.
their focus is violence against women. But in this, but they just want to say anyone who has any counselor who has an assault charge should be restricted. Now, let's get away from the confusion. They don't want him thrown off a council. They just want him not to do his duty, or anyone who has had an assault charge. They don't want them to do their job, basically, and be in the public eye until that is resolved. The
Yeah,
law does not state that. The law states that you could be an axe murderer and still be, or accused of being an axe murderer and still be on
yeah,
council until you're legal, until it's legally resolved.
yeah, yeah,
Is that right? Now, Mike Strange has defended himself, saying, "I have, um, I have a duty to do, and until this is resolved in court, I am presumed innocent before guilty." And he said that that is a foundational part of our legal system.
yeah.
You
And
are
it is.
presumed
Yeah,
you are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So his attitude is, and his point is, I have a job to do. And
yeah,
until somebody tells me legally that I have committed a crime or that has been confirmed, I have a job to do and I must continue to do it. The advocacy group, however, feels that no, you shouldn't, because you should be suspended
well, I was
until that is resolved.
I've been asking around a few friends of mine this same question, and without using Mike Strange's name. So if you're being accused of doing this thing, right? What would be the right thing to do? If you were accused of it and you were a sitting, councillor. And the interesting results that I got tended towards the viewpoint that the best thing you could do would be to voluntarily stand down.
I would say that, but trying to put myself into that position, if you voluntarily stand down, the public will say, aha, he's
Yeah,
guilty.
yeah, yeah, I know, and that's part of the problem. And that was the argument that I had with said people, and they said no. Generally speaking, and there are examples. There's an example under Thatcher, one of the ministers who was accused of something, and I forget which minister, and I forget what they were accused of. um, Basically came out and said, said to Margaret Thatcher, "No, I'm going to stand. I'm going to stand down. I'm not guilty. I'm going to stand down. It's up to the court to make their determination." And as it, actually, I don't think it was a court thing. It was a parliamentary thing. And later on, he stood down for about 2 years, and later on was found innocent of the charges.
See, that took 2 years out of his job. Like, he's elected to do a job. What about? I think it was a fellow by the name of Chang, in our own parliament, who is accused of taking money from China or something like
Yeah,
that. Remember the Chinese
yeah, yeah,
uh, influencing uh, Chinese writings that were largely Chinese, and he was accused of that, of taking money or being influenced by the Chinese government. He first said that he was innocent, but then found that he had to step down for the meantime, anyway, until that was resolved legally because it was disrupting Parliament too much. So, out of a sense of duty, he backed down until it was resolved because it was just taking up too much of the air in
Yeah.
Parliament. So
Well, that actually was
that
the
was a decision he made on his own, but it was not a legal decision, a decision that was forced upon him legally.
yeah,
He
and that
could,
was what exactly that minister, the Thatcher's minister, did. It took the accusations out of the everyday in Parliament.
yeah, which slowed down Parliament. Now that was a
Yeah,
sense of duty.
yeah,
In this particular case, in our own council, that is not the case. It hasn't interfered with the process of government. Um, Councillors aren't standing up one right after the other, demanding that Strange be suspended or ask him to recuse his duties or anything like that. So the business of government continues.
yeah.
However, it is the perception of many people, and particularly women, that when you have a potential criminal on council, that should that should be
It,
determined before it comes back on
let's
council.
let's
That's a
be
very hard thing. What is it legally? What is it constitutionally? Now,
yeah. Let's
constitutionally,
be
there is constitutional questions here. I will say this: that the women who came with signs were thrown out of council last time because of our decorum rules. But is that an infringement on their constitutional rights? That hasn't really been answered. And
yeah,
now, is it constitutional? Is it the constitutional right of Mike Strange to stay there on council until proven guilty or
yeah.
innocent? And um, so there are constitutional issues here that sort of befuddle the mind when you think, you know, who is constitutionally right and who isn't.
Yeah, yeah, and easy for us to discuss and talk about. Harder, it has to be a court really, and if it's not part of the current law, Strange doesn't have to stand down at all because the law would have to be changed in order to force that.
Yeah. So
I think it
Bill
part of me
9,
says it's
the
why.
Ontario Provincial Act,
Yeah,
Bill 9 would
yeah,
have to be adjusted, and that's what they're arguing for. The
yeah,
women who say no.
yeah, and part of me actually says that for Strange, the best thing would be for him to voluntarily stand down. But part of me also says that if you're not guilty, if you believe you're not guilty, stand proud and say it.
Yeah. Well, he has already said he isn't guilty,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he hopes that the truth comes out in the trial. That's his opinion. And the other factor here, though, is sometimes in council you have difficult decisions that may come down to one vote,
yes.
one or two votes. Do you really want your councillor out of there when you're doing something important in
Well,
the city business and
but would
you're
you
taking a
temper?
vote away from that decision making, a vote that the people of Niagara Falls have put there for a reason to represent them? An important vote comes up in council and he can't participate in it.
Yeah,
Is that going to be fair to the people of Niagara Falls?
yeah. But again, it wouldn't necessarily work that way because, in fact, the next person on the list would be the one who would. Um,
No, you're not talking about getting rid of him. You're talking about asking him to step aside so that seat would remain unfilled until he was resolved. You
not
can't put
so.
another person in there.
I'm not so sure.
No, you can't. You can't suddenly say, "Okay, you're the next person in line, So you come in and replace him. It's not like he retired or left
Yeah.
like Thomas did, or die like Campbell did. So so that seat remains unfilled. And if you come to a
I know,
point of city business that's very, very difficult, and you're down to one vote one way or the other, and your city has voted for a person to go on to council to make those decisions, and you take him away from the decision making process at a time when you might get city council business that is a split vote.
but actually, Dave, let me just correct you on something. During the 2014 to 2018 term, when Laurie Lococo had come in ninth place, she was asked to stand in for about 3 months, I believe, when Wayne Gates, I believe, was actually standing for regional election, I think.
Oh, okay.
when
Well,
he, when he did a by-election. So at the moment, Dan Moody would be the person who would be standing in. He received 4,104 votes.
but that's a decision council would have to make, I
Council
think.
would have to make that decision, yes. And by the way, the next two on the list is Dan Moody, who got 4,104 votes, and Anne Radicic, who got 3,718 votes.
All right. So maybe they have a way of replacing him, but it's still not not the person that the city voted to put there.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
know.
so and particularly Mike Strange, who gets more votes than anyone else.
Yeah.
He's the number one counselor, the number one person that people have elected above all others. So there's a problem with that, I think. But anyway, that has to be all resolved legally.
Yeah.
Uh, Unfortunately, legal cases take forever
Okay.
sometimes. This one, this began back in May, and I don't think we've already had a couple of court cases and whatever else. But anyway, what does Mike say? Unusually in water seems to be always associated with water.
I'm not sure what that was about. What about the jailbirds? I know for a fact they are taking social services back home. What kind of world are we in? Uh, yeah,
We're
Mike
talking about
Strange is
different things here.
taking a stand, the wrong one. He should just say he has a drinking problem and address it.
Oh, yeah. That's another accusation, and it may be revealed in the court case that that he had imbibed too much. I don't know. Um, I don't know Mike Strange, um,
Yeah.
uh, but um,
Okay, moving on. Also, Mike said the mayor was not allowing anyone to speak on it, but Mike Strange and Laurie put the kibosh on that when the mayor didn't want a farce. Sorry,
well,
when the mayor did not want a farce. Yeah,
well, I'll put it. Well, Lori's always been was there in the first right from the beginning, but even in last meeting, but this particular time, um, I got to sort of doff my hat a bit to Mike to bring it up. It would not have been resolved. We'd be going through this over and over again. So he stood up and he says he wants the delegation to be able to address
yeah,
council, and that kind of overrided the decorum.
and
And because he put it out there as a counselor, then they can bring it up at the next meeting. I suppose it's going to be the next meeting where Bill 9 can be discussed, where women who say no can bring their points of view. Of
yeah,
course, no decision can be made at our city council because it's a
it's a provincial issue. Yeah,
it's a
and
provincial act.
And again, Mike is correct in saying largely Mike Strange is a rubber stamp, a nice guy, but really has no, has no real nous as a councillor. Wouldn't dare say no when there's a council recommendation in favour of something.
Yeah, that you can't judge the person based on on that. It has to go legal. Like
Yeah,
you may be right about all those things, but um, but the fact is he got the most votes of anyone for a councillor 2 times going now.
yeah.
So
Well,
obviously the city, there would be many people who would object to that because he's the most popular councillor. You
well, he
know,
got the largest number of votes, that's for sure.
yeah.
But I suspect that will go down at the next election.
But it depends. It depends on what sorts this out legally. We don't know what happened,
Well,
right?
here's the thing: you may end up with a situation whereby the actual trial doesn't happen until sometime like next year, i.e., around about September, October time next year, right? You don't know what the court timetables are.
Well, precisely, and that's the whole hitch. He could be out of government for a long time if he was asked to recuse his place. But right now, the bill is very clear. He's permitted to stay on
Yeah,
until it is resolved legally. And as
and
Mike himself has said, you're supposed to you're supposed to consider me innocent until proven guilty.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the very curious things that we have to live with in all of this, right? All right.
And the fact that his alleged crimes have nothing to do with city business,
Yeah.
he's not voting whether or not you're allowed to hit a woman or not, or how much you anything of that kind, or anything to do with
No,
crime. Usually, they're talking about what building is going to get put up or whatever.
yeah.
So
Exactly.
I'm not so sure. I personally, I'm kind of have real mixed feelings about this. If I put myself in that position, I certainly would want to stay on and do the duty that the electorate asked me to do. Uh, if I felt that things were going to not go my way, I don't know what I would do.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
Got the okay,
Yeah. He's just repeating what we've just said. All right.
okay.
Moving on. Police are saying that Canadian Armed Forces members plotted an anti-government militia in Quebec. They're trying to seize a plot of land, um, and and kind of build up anti-government militias as a part of it.
This is a kind of a paramilitary. Well, it's not even a paramilitary group. It is actually made up of military guys, but it is a right wing, sort of a far right extremist organization, budding organization that is made up of Canadian military men. And their plan was to capture some territory, and therefore, after capturing that territory, they could launch operations against Canada. Um, they want the whole system to come down and something to replace it. In the article, it says that this uh, members of ex military or military members uh, in a higher frequency than in the general public tend to be extremists. Now, this is not always a right wing extremist group. It could be a left wing extremist group. We see less of them now than we did in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but we seem to see this shift towards where it was the Bader Meinhof gang and the Red Brigade and things like that in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They were far right, far left. I mean, far left groups. Now we seem to shift to the far right, but it's extremist groups, and it's very shocking, really. The Canadian members of the Canadian Armed Forces conspiring to bring down the government by military means.
Yeah. And what they've done here is they broke this partly because they've actually gone through Facebook and social media accounts by these people, and obviously been following them around. But they arrested these people because of this whole plot. There's dozens of guns being seized.
Yeah, this is what they call an anti-government militia, and in this particular case, it's a far right-wing extremist militia.
Yeah.
It's
But
clear.
again,
It's
I'm not
clear that it could.
sure.
It's clear that it could also have been a far left one as
Well,
well.
my concern about this is whether it's right or left. My concern about this is that, and I get that where we sit right now, probably the police are looking of keeping evidence close to their chest because there's a possibility that other people may well be involved in this type of activity. But I'm not seeing much convincing of us that in fact there was a plot going. I'm not seeing here a plot. I'm seeing allegations of a plot, but not actually a plot, if you know what I mean. And I'm not trying to defend these people.
Well,
I'm just
they
looking
they
at what
have
I see.
they put their intentions clear. It says here tackling ideologically driven violent extremism, particularly within the Canadian Armed Forces, have become a key focus for the Canadian government in recent years. The military police, in conjunction with the Canadian Army, supported RCMP led investigation, which has resulted in the arrest of these individuals.
Yeah,
And basically, what they wanted to do was capture a piece of land and then work again, uh, do their anti extremism or extreme military. Now, the amount of weapons they had, and remember, this is a fledgling group, so it's
yeah.
small. They're still trying to organize.
But they have 50 illegal firearms.
Yeah, so they're just beginning. So they nipped this one in the bud. Now it seems to me whoever is organizing this is way out in la la land. They're like kind of like a Timothy McVeigh type thing. They think they're going to be able to cause a revolution of some kind by taking a piece of property in and around Quebec. Now they didn't have enough guns, but they were collecting guns, munitions, and looking for like-minded people to join their group.
Yeah. Four
And
people doesn't
so
start a revolution, but still.
the authorities nipped it in the bud, but it is far out ideological because it has sort of made it impossible for them to even accomplish what they're doing because their ideological bent is so way out in la la land.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, how is it they're going to get a bunch of people take a piece of property, uses it as a base, and then attack the Canadian government? What is it in the mentality of these people to think that that was even possible? Now, I'm glad they nipped it in the bud because they may have began operations that killed people or hurt people before they were squashed, but they're going to be squashed no matter what
yeah.
because their ideology is so stupid.
Well, okay. So when they've captured four people here, are there other people involved? Because it seems unlikely that you've got a group that's only four people.
Yeah,
Are these the
there seems to
colonels?
be. Yeah, okay.
Are these the colonels? The kind of just the kind of what would be leaders of the group? Would be generals of the group if they're going to self-pronounce.
They've found extremism in the Canadian military. So you have to ask yourself, what is the screening process by which they get a military person, or and they end up with a higher percentage of extremists in the military. Now you can understand a lot of these guys that join the military are people who do that for a sense of duty and it's a
Mhm.
good career.
Yeah,
But ideologically, how do you screen somebody's ideology? When somebody
yeah.
comes to join the military and you say,
Well,
okay, what is your opinion on the Canadian government? And they say it's a bunch of communists and we got to overturn them. Or, do they do any background checks to
and
find out
but
what they've
again,
been involved
again,
in their email or in
yeah.
their social media?
But again, Dave, if you actually asked a person what your opinion was, the person who actually says what you said, um, would be tossed from the recruitment process. But the person who knows what they really are would actually mouth off something that they'd get recruited because they know how to play the system.
Maybe, but there's going to be traces in their social media and others, unless they were radicalized later.
Yeah,
So you'll find if you do a background check, you might be able to uh, give evidence or find evidence that this person may not be the type of person you want in your army. But anyway, aside from that, that does happen. It's a much bigger problem, I believe, in the States, where they have all kinds of paramilitary groups all over the place waiting for their opportunity to jump into disorganized government collapse and then take over. That Timothy McVeigh was talking about was one of these
yeah. Oh yeah.
marginalized, like weirdo
Yeah, he
groups.
was he was a weirdo nutcase, that's for sure.
And so were the
And
guys so was the group that he was involved with. They
yeah,
they wanted the government to fall. And in his idiotic mind, he blew up a government building and he killed, among other things, lots of children.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, and that of course drove a lot of anger across the United States because it's like you're dealing with a lot of it was actually the children that are most remembered, of course, from the Oklahoma City bombing.
yeah. So these people that they just captured are potentially capable of doing something like that
Yeah,
because violence, extremism, and weapons—that's what they were collecting. So it's a good thing they grabbed them now. They were never going to succeed in toppling the Canadian government, ever, ever. But if they did something like McVeigh did, they'd probably stop them from doing something terrible, which is a good thing. And I'm glad they got on top of it. But the fact that people out there exist, they're no different from the people who are Islamic people who are radicalized, who think that by blowing up a building like the World Trade Center, that's going to make any big difference
yeah, yeah.
in the politics of that particular country, right? It made nothing. All it did was kill a lot of people, a lot of innocent people,
And
and their
you can
whole
see the
cause
same.
was denounced.
Yeah, you can see the same in the 7/7 bombings in London. You can see the same in the November 13th massacre that took place in France. It galvanized those particular societies against those particular groups and viewpoints.
Yes, it also victimized the Muslim faith too, because these
Yeah,
extremists go about murdering people, and everybody paints all Muslims with the same brush for a little bit of time.
a load
What's
of,
wrong with these
yeah.
people that they do this kind of thing? And
Well,
and so their objectives are extremely weird.
Well, in the 7/7 bombing in London, it was a Muslim guy who'd had his legs blown off beneath his knee, who was for a period of time a suspect. So he was fairly close to the bomb when it occurred. So he lost his lower legs, and he happened to be Muslim. So they were being very accusative of him for a period of time.
But it wasn't him.
But it wasn't him. It was nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
You know. Um, and, but again,
Yeah.
it's
See, so they go in and they kill a lot of people. And so like
yeah,
whatever. But that mindset's out there. That extremism is out there. That
And
rage is out there, and it
yeah,
seems to be increasing everywhere.
yeah.
If it's not left wing, it's right wing. The extreme.
Well, and it's
We
not
saw
just
what happened in the
yeah,
George Floyd demonstrations. You had the demonstrators, and then you had these weirdos, Antifa types that went around smashing buildings and throwing and burning stuff up. And then of course you had the looters, which you can't. They're just opportunists. But you
it's
had
a lot more.
and Antifa would be considered far left.
Yeah, and it's not just a thing. I'm going to disagree because I don't. I've never liked the left versus right analogy. It's not. It's no longer. It's not a left and right thing. It's all manners of groups getting involved in this now, in this type of thing.
Well, politically, these people at the Canadian Armed Forces personnel that were attempting what we were just talking about were far right extremists. The Antifa people are far left extremists. Now you may have religious extremists, which would be the
Yeah, that's a
Islamists.
different matter entirely. Yeah,
That's that's motivated by religion, and but the other ones are motivated by politics, and both the far left and the right, quite often, they're the ones that branch into violence.
anyway, let's move on from there. Um, you put this one up. Netanyahu has nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. Oh my God.
This is idiotic. Now, Netanyahu is the head of a country that is obliterating the Gaza Strip and allowing the settlers in the West Bank to do atrocities and to take
Yeah.
land from Palestinians and attack Palestinians nearly at will. They are without Palestinian gets killed. There's no investigation. Somebody throws a stone at an Israeli soldier and they're thrown in jail. But a settler could burn or attack Palestinians, and nothing ever happens to them. And if they
Yeah.
do get grabbed, they go in for a weekend, and that's it. So this is the guy who is going, and he's also being charged by the ICJ for genocide and
Yeah.
war crimes.
Yeah.
And this is the guy that's nominating Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. Show me where there is peace. There is no peace in Ukraine. There is no peace in Gaza. The guy who precipitated this massacre in Gaza is the one giving the nomination. Do you think the Nobel Committee would even consider that because
Yeah.
of the source of the nomination?
Yeah.
Now,
I
Trump
would
has
be very I would be very curious about that. Yeah, I don't think so. Right.
Trump wants a
Um,
Nobel Peace Prize for what? He's not done any peace.
yeah. And Netanyahu, the war criminal, is nominating Trump for a Nobel Prize for allowing Netanyahu to kill Palestinians at will, is what Mike is saying.
That's like Hitler nominating Stalin for the Nobel Peace Prize. Well,
Yeah.
the war is going on.
Yeah.
I'll nominate you, nominate me. What is more preposterous? Now Trump going to nominate him? Now Trump has a very, very slim chance of getting some consideration because of the Congo Rwanda peace deal that they're trying to initiate now. The African country of Congo has actually asked several months ago, no, maybe not several months ago, just a few months ago, asked the United States to come in and broker some kind of peace deal they have had with Rwanda and the M23 rebels. So they say they have that thing underway, but nothing has been proven
But
yet.
again,
Nothing has come to conclusion, and there has been no real steps towards peace, just potential steps.
potential. You don't nominate a person on potential steps. You nominate a person upon hard fought successes.
Yeah. So
right?
what did Trump do? Trump dropped bombs in Iran, and well, and then supplied Israel with every kind of help it needed to bomb the crap out of Iran, bomb the crap out of Gaza, bomb the crap out of Lebanon. That's a like that's Trump's government supplying those weapons now. It used to be Biden. It's preposterous. It's preposterous that he would get a peace deal. Now, what makes me very frightened here is, or very concerned, not frightened, but very concerned, is that they'll try to mollycoddle Trump. Like
Yeah,
you saw what happened in the EU when Trump went over there for a NATO thing. They were just kind of slathering at him and like just stroking his ego right after the other, telling him how wonderful a guy he is, and just kind of really making my stomach turn. And just because they want to get on his good side, they know that he loves compliments and he loves to be praised, that kind of thing. So that's what they did. And I hope no one in the Nobel committee will say, "Look, maybe we could shut this guy up. Maybe we can get him to do what he's supposed to do if we give him this award." And
yeah,
all evidence up until now, no matter how many times you bow down to Trump, the worse it is for you. If you stand up to him, you get a better of a chance.
yeah,
So this whole thing is preposterous,
yeah,
particularly when no results have happened between Congo and Rwanda.
yeah.
Nothing at all has
Well,
happened.
it's more a potential than a reality. And we should take a look at this particular conflict, maybe in the next few days.
Yeah, well, what happened here is Rwanda is selling uh, cobalt. I think it's cobalt and other
Yeah,
material, mined materials like that, but they don't have any resources of themselves. What they're doing is stealing it from Eastern Congo. Now, the Congo came in and offered Trump this deal. Look, come on in and help us out resolving this, and we'll give you special considerations for these rare earth, uh,
minerals. Yeah,
for these minerals, cobalt in particular. And that sort of peaked. They took a cue from what was happening in Ukraine. Ukraine said, "Look, help us out, and we'll give you." Trump demanded the rare earth minerals and stuff, mining concessions in order to keep helping Ukraine. Congo heard this and says, "Look, if you help us, we'll give you a special deal on all that stuff. We'll bring you allow. But right now we need peace. We got the M23 rebels. We got the Rwanda
yeah,
government supporting M23. Plus, you have criminal gangs that have no political affiliation that are just using the disruption of the time to force people into slave labor to extract
oh,
cobalt.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. All right, let's move on. Okay, Canada's going to be hit with drastic 50% tariffs on copper.
Not just Canada, everywhere in the world is going to be hit with these tariffs of 50% on copper. This will affect Canada, but Canada is the second largest supplier of copper to the United States, but it does not. But the number one supplier of refined copper, that which goes into wires and that kind of thing, comes from China.
Hmm.
So most of the copper that comes into the United States comes from Chile. They they send over what 70 to 75% of
Copper
it.
ore, copper ore, or
Well,
refined.
it's not it is there's different levels of refinement of copper. So you can get sheet copper.
Yeah.
That's what they're getting, but not the stuff that has now been refined enough to put into wires or things of that kind. China's got that sewn up. They've got they're the ones that take copper and take it to the next level. But sheet copper, you've got all kinds of sheet copper coming from Chile.
Yeah.
70% of it comes from Chile. Canada maybe supplies about 10% of it to the United States. So it would affect us, but not too bad. We could still sell our copper in other places. but it's not a big thing. It's
The
not like
interesting,
aluminum and steel. Aluminum and steel are much more important to us.
yeah, the interesting thing is he's dealing with these now on an industry by industry basis, because at the cabinet meeting he said today we're doing copper.
Yeah, and also I should add to that. Brazil was almost exempted from real punitive tariffs, but they're hit with a 50% tariff now too. This is what Trump says. You have to. They have to be self-sufficient in um, in critical minerals and metals. Copper is critical. They make a lot of copper in the United States,
Yeah,
but he wants more of it made there. And they do have the capacity to ramp up copper for quite a bit. Well, what's he forgetting there, though, is a lot of the copper from Canada and the United States goes to China, is worked there, and comes back and is sold to right back to him.
yeah, yeah,
So it's China which was doing. I think they're the ones that are winding the wires or whatever. They're refining the copper to industrial grade or technical
yeah.
grade. Sheet copper would be good for a lot of different things, but it still has to go through another process by before it's put into computers or whatever else. That's
Well,
how my understanding.
copper wire is, yeah, you said computers. Yep. Copper wire is known for its high conductivity. It's one of the reasons why it is used, where it's used. And in fact, devices, the plugs that you use for your devices have probably got copper in them. Um, but of course, one of the things about copper is that it's not as tensile as some other materials for conducting electricity. You pull a copper wire, you can actually separate the copper. You can break the copper, wire within it.
Yeah, but why copper is very bendable. You can bend it again, and bend it again.
Yeah,
That's one of the reasons why it's good. If you have braided copper, then you can bend it and twist it all day long; it'll never break. the The main thing here, however, is that is conductivity.
yeah, absolutely.
Aluminum would be the next choice after that, but in households, it isn't very. Uh, it's been sort of made illegal in Ontario now. For a time, they went to aluminum, but they found that aluminum becomes brittle, particularly at the terminals, like a receptacle, and it tends to break, and it also tends to heat up more because the resistance is in it. Now, the
Yeah.
number one conductivity metal in the world is silver, but that's way more expensive. Like if you really
Actually,
want the best
actually,
conductivity ever, you would go with silver.
shh, gold is better than silver.
No, gold is number four.
Is it?
Gold is used in areas because it does not rust or does not
Well,
oxidize.
they use a lot of gold around computer chips.
That's right, because they don't want it to become because it's what's called uh, it cannot be oxidized. It cannot
Yeah,
change.
yeah, yeah.
Gold is very
Well, that's
stable,
one of the reasons.
whereas even copper, but silver will oxidize.
Yes,
But if you want straight conductivity in your house, or even if transmission line, if you could use silver, that's the one you'd use. It's the number one best conductor. Two, I think, is aluminum, maybe. No, anyway, I think gold is number four.
but gold is used in critical connections, like as I said, computer chips,
Yes, and
connecting
that is
computer.
because of its ability to stay stable and not oxidize.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
It's
that's why I
incorruptible.
thought it was number.
This is the reason why they use it
Well, that's
because
why
it
I
is
thought it was number one.
incorruptible.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was number one. Sorry, that was what I. But my thinking was clearly out of date.
Yeah, that's well. They use gold, and like they would probably use gold in critical areas on spaceships or whatever else
Yeah,
because it's nearly incorruptible.
but
So it
again,
doesn't oxidize.
yeah.
right?
But again, if you were to take your board out of your computer, it's the only areas where gold is in use is actually where the computer chip is, the CPU is actually soldered to the board. A lot of the rest of it is actually copper wire.
Yeah. So copper is, I think, the second best. Aluminum and then gold. Believe it or not, I think even gold is not even
Yeah,
as conductive as aluminum.
I
But the
knew
fact
that.
that it's
I knew
incorruptible
that, but but
is the big
yeah,
deal.
but aluminium has bad oxidation, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's great for long distance transmission lines because it's relatively inexpensive and relatively good transmitter.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. So moving on. Just so the library is in a race against time to scan the Niagara Falls Review negatives. So these are the photographs that I thought okay, this is the newspapers from the Niagara Falls Review, but no, this is the negatives, all the pictures that they've collected over the years. For example, one of the examples is a photo of Lundy's Lane Motel and Restaurant taken on the 5th of April 1955, showing and
Yes.
presuming the opening of that hotel. Wonderful like type picture that's really expressive of Niagara life.
Okay, here you go. This is what China does to copper. I'll put it refined. They refine it. We don't find too much refining going on over here. We make sheet
Okay.
copper or billet copper that's sent other and most and sent for refinement. Now, refined copper is that has undergone a process to remove impurities, resulting in a high purity form, typically 99.99 or higher, making it suitable for various industrial applications, especially electrical conductivity. So, like you're thinking of electric motors or something like that, a computer, what's involved in the computer. This purification process is crucial for ensuring copper's desired properties for specific uses. That's what China does. But we don't do it so much here in North America, and we import that refined copper. We make lots of copper, but we don't refine it.
Yeah. All right.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Great. All right, so these photographs that the Niagara Falls Review photographs are being kind of there's a race against time to scan and get all of these into digital format.
yes,
There's
this
somewhere
is
in the
very
region,
interesting.
yeah, there's somewhere in the region of 200,000 negatives that they're wanting to keep.
Yeah, libraries have done this job of trying to archive what has happened in their own particular cities or
Oh,
regions
I
by
think it's
keeping a
vital.
historical record.
Yeah, I think it's vital because hey, this photograph that's restaurant April 5th, 1955. Yeah, there's nobody sitting there. It's not particularly stunning, but it is something about a point in Niagara history, and that's what needs to be kept.
Yeah, so they're in a big task now. They have done a lot of archiving. The problem is certain films degrade.
Yeah,
Certain
yeah,
they used to do put a lot of stuff on microfiche, which was a great, a very very good system of preserving documents, microfiching them. But you can do even much better now. You can digitalize them. The
yeah,
problem with any photograph or anything they try to keep between the 20s and 30s, for instance, is a type of film which is called safe film. It says in the article, which begins to they call it vinegar. It starts to break down and sort of seep out of
yeah,
vinegar.
and
Doesn't It doesn't react well to humidity and certain heat, so it's a
yeah,
vulnerable record that could
it
easily
kind of blisters
become.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
So
process of vinegar syndrome is it blisters up the actual negatives, photographic negatives.
yeah. Now, there's certain things they can do, like throw them in the freezer to stop or slow down the process. But once it begins, it can't be stopped. So you have to save the document. So you have to digitalize it or whatever. If now the the library is trying to save 200,000 of these,
Mm,
and a lot of them are on vulnerable media right now, that's going to be a challenge.
yeah,
And it's an important thing for the history of of our town and our city and our region. However, do they have the wherewithal to get it all done before? I imagine they'll have to tackle the most um, vulnerable records, like the ones that will begin to break down, the ones that will
yeah.
vinegar.
Well, I would also then say that what they should be doing is really we need to digitalize a lot of this history before it is lost.
Well, that's the issue. They point out that every different era they've done what they could to preserve things as safe as they can,
Yeah, yeah,
um, and then but each different system has a flaw. Now,
yeah.
digitalization seems to be a pretty good one. I don't think the digitalization breaks down. It takes, I think, decades before any kind of images break down on digitalized anything that's saved digitally. Plus,
No,
it can be
digitally
transferred.
doesn't break down. Digitally, so long as you go back to the original core, source, generally tends to be as high quality as ever. You can, if you're going from the original source to an image, you maintain the good quality.
Doesn't the original, like whatever hard drive that it's saved
Your
in,
hard
do
drive could
that? Do
be,
that? They degrade?
hard drives can, but again, we're tending to go to solid state drives nowadays.
Yeah, I
Everything's
got one on
being,
my computer now.
yeah,
I got
everything's
a
being
solid state.
recorded on solid state drives nowadays.
Yeah, my
The
hard drive
only
just
the
got
only
replaced with
worry about the only worry about a solid state drive is that it's more susceptible to an EMP pulse. So you know,
well, Mike says save history before it's lost, and I agree with him.
yeah,
It's a however, there's
yeah,
cutbacks,
absolutely,
resources. Um, we find that the Western democracies are addicted to debt, and that's what's inhibiting everything.
yeah.
Everything that's not urgent gets put on the back burner because there's never enough money for it.
Well, I
Hopefully, we'll have
what
enough
you've got to do
resources
with
to save
these,
our history.
yeah, what you've got to do with this collection is to have one or two people working full time on it and just slowly working their way through the archives.
Well, they got
Prioritize,
200,000.
yeah,
They got 200,000 to
prioritizing.
go, so I could just say, "Hey, Molly, I've done my 41st one.
Yeah,
200,
but they need,
160 to go."
yeah, but they need to actually just prioritize the most urgent, work on the most urgent, and then keep going forward, right?
Yeah, those that are the most vulnerable, hit them first.
Yeah,
Prioritize.
yeah.
And
And they've
yeah,
probably got a specialist in there who's basically working full time on this,
yeah. I
right?
remember going to the review one time and asking when I was on the committee, the editorial board that they had, the citizens one, and they said, and I asked them for the archives they have or the ability to look into their archives, and they said no, no. If you want to look into the archives, you got to go to the library. You can
Yeah.
do it through the library.
The library has an official work. Yeah, often does for most libraries. Actually, funnily enough, do have official archives for the local press. It's
I've
been a funny history.
I've been notified by the library too that I have some of the stuff, some of my stuff is being archived.
Okay.
I don't know if that's back when I was being a wrestler, and the wrestling matches would be covered by the review,
Okay.
or if
Yeah.
it was yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why they would necessarily notify you, but anyway, that's a not bad thing.
Well,
Nothing.
They notified me a couple of times when I wrote an instant editorial, and I think it was like that. Now, my idea was they said it was being archived, but I didn't know that it was going to be. I just thought the whole paper was, and they just kind of notified you if you know. Actually, I think it might even have been a mistake. I don't think they needed to notify me. They just do it,
Yeah,
because it's property of the Niagara Falls Review.
yeah. I don't know. They need to notify the person involved in the picture because I remember because I
Not
used
just well, in this case, it was an article.
yeah an article by you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There was an article. There were articles about me by the in the local press when I was young as well. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
The old
if
money road photos are the best, says Mike.
yeah, no, no. The uh, the best pictures is me winning a wrestling match.
No,
Those are
we
the
don't want
best.
to. We don't want to know about that one.
Uh,
We're not interested in Dave's trials and tribulations. Hey, it just boasts his head. It makes it look bigger. And after all, he couldn't wrestle it. He couldn't even wrestle a fly today.
I wouldn't put it past. I could probably go toe to toe for 10 seconds.
And then he would beat you. He would flap his wing and smack you on the eyelid, and he'd be gone.
I just have to say, hold it. I gotta go get some medication.
There we go. There's the truth out of this. All right. Well, thanks, thanks, Dave. It's been an enjoyable morning, but Dave,
Yes.
we should be kind of wrapping it up at that. I think. Feel.
Yeah, I think so. It's 8:09. We're past.
Yeah.
Anyway, uh, without further ado, I bid you adieu. But please do not forget about Gaza. It's an outrage that Netanyahu is nominating somebody for peace, where
Yeah.
there has been no peace. And
Yeah.
if anything, there's been more war, more suffering. This is ridiculous. It's like bizarro world.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody.
All right. Have a great day.